"Mike, can you open it?" A small voice came from behind me, standing motionless in front of an aluminum door. That frail voice, which seemed like it would fly away if breathed on, belonged to Mr. Johnson, who was a college student just 2 months ago. I turned to look at Mr. Johnson while gripping the door handle. Mr. Johnson, who had joined our company as a new graduate a month and a half ago, was anxiously alternating his gaze between the door and me. Mr. Johnson and I, both part of the administration department, visit each department twice a month to remind them about expense claims. The first time is around the 20th of the month, before we get swamped with month-end tasks. We advise them to not be late. The second time, we list the employees who have not submitted their application form even after the deadline and make individual requests. The bundle of lists Mr. Johnson was tightly holding had become wrinkled. Scared of the sales department, I couldn't help but ask, seeing Mr. Johnson's gaze darting around so much. Then Mr. Johnson replied in an even quieter voice than before. "No, it's not that I'm scared. Just thought they're lively," he said, looking down. To Mr. Johnson, I blurted out a baseless "It's okay. We're all part of the same company, right? We're working towards the same goals, so there's no reason we can't cooperate." Without looking at Mr. Johnson, I gave a thumbs up. Mr. Scholter said, "Mike is so pure-hearted, he might get fooled by someone someday. I kind of get what he means now." I heard Mr. Johnson's laughter from behind. It seemed he had relaxed his shoulders. Unlike the administration, where only business-like conversations are common, the sales department is always lively. It was Mr. Thompson, the head of the sales department, who said that casual conversations are also practice for honing sales skills. "Excuse me." As I knocked, a light sound unique to the aluminum door resonated. I opened the door and raised my voice loud enough to echo across the entire floor, the largest in the office. The eyes of the sales team members gathered on me. Voices like "It's that time already," and "Oh no, I forgot," bloomed in various tones across the floor. Among them, the most prominent was Mr. Thompson's voice, booming. "Here comes the administration." Mr. Thompson, a former star of the college football team, stood before us, still maintaining his physique from those days. Imposing and yet reassuring, Mr. Thompson made Mr. Johnson shrink behind me. I understood Mr. Johnson's feelings. I've been in the administration department for 10 years since joining the company. It took me 3 years to get used to Mr. Thompson, maybe because I had few opportunities to interact with him. Now, I appreciate the unique strengths of Mr. Thompson's straightforward, athletic club style, his persistence, and his extraordinary caring for his direct subordinates. Even now, Mr. Thompson stood in front of us trying to move deeper into the floor, like a wall. Mr. Thompson must be trying to protect his subordinates from getting reprimanded. At the hectic start of the month, you guys sure have it tough. Office work is something anyone can do, right? Couldn't you pay a bit more attention to sales? Mr. Thompson's laughter, powerful enough to blow away a plywood board, echoed across the floor. "If that's what you think, then please guide sales so well that we don't need to come," I responded. I took the list from Mr. Johnson's hand and handed it to Mr. Thompson. After saying goodbye, I left the sales department's floor. Their office is on the 5th floor. Neither Mr. Johnson nor I said a word until the elevator descended to the 2nd floor, where the administration is located. "I don't like the way he talks," Mr. Johnson muttered as the elevator doors opened. I nodded to Mr. Johnson, who was holding the door open button, then stepped out into the corridor and turned right. The entrance near the admin seats is on the left. To the left, as one steps out of the elevator, are vending machines and a small break area. "What would you like to drink?" If I ask Mr. Johnson, he replies in a small voice, "Sorry, can you drink coffee? If it's not too bitter. Then, how about a café au lait?" I handed Mr. Johnson a steaming cup of café au lait and sat down on a sofa nearby. Even when I encouraged Mr. Johnson to sit, he didn't bother to drink his coffee. "What didn't you like?" As I sipped the coffee, the aroma of cheap coffee fills the air. While quenching my dry throat, Mr. Johnson's gaze wandered left and right several times. Then, his eyes settled on one point. After taking a deep breath as if he'd made up his mind, he looked up. "I was originally supposed to be assigned to sales. Did you know that?" "Yeah, I knew. I've been overseeing new graduate recruitment for the past 3 years. Then, was it you who changed my assignment to the admin? I nodded. Mr. Johnson's face turned increasingly red as he stared at me with wide eyes. Did you think I wouldn't make it in sales? It was more about timing. When there's an opening in the administration, it's common to reconsider placements when a suitable candidate emerges. Did you prefer sales? I tried to recall Mr. Johnson's entry sheet. It should have mentioned a preference for the administration. From our interview, I judged that office work would suit him, as his self-analysis suggested. That's why I had to negotiate with Mr. Thompson over Mr. Johnson. Our company, Johnson Construction, where Mr. Johnson and I work, has branches all over the country. There are no administrative employees at each branch. We employ part-time clerical workers who send documents to us in the administration at the headquarters for processing. As long as one is in the administration, there is no transfer to branches. But if assigned to sales, the likelihood of transfer is high. Mr. Thompson prefers to place young talent in sales. Whether someone has a family is a crucial factor in considering transfers. Typically, new graduates are initially assigned to the sales. It's the best department for understanding our company. I understand that. But this time, I couldn't give in. The administration department of Johnson Construction, a company expanding its business year by year, had not increased its staff for 10 years. I, sitting at the same desk for 10 years, am still the youngest member. However, few people wish to apply for the administrative position because of its routine tasks and lower salary. I had almost given up when I found Mr. Johnson's entry sheet. As usual, without much concern for his preferences, he was about to be taken by sales. Last summer, I faced off with Mr. Thompson every night in the meeting room. Then Mr. Thompson remarked, "You've got guts for someone from the admin," and clapping his hands in admiration, withdrew his claim on Mr. Johnson's entry sheet. I thought it was for the best for Mr. Johnson. Wondering if my intuition had dulled over my 10 years in office work, I looked up at Mr. Johnson as he continued. I'm really bad at talking to people. So when I was notified of my assignment to the admin, I felt relieved. Is it wrong to feel relieved? Mr. Johnson nodded ambiguously. I was really happy to be chosen for the administrative personnel. Just thinking about being in sales made me so anxious I couldn't sleep. And even now, after hearing such harsh words, I hate it but can't talk back. That's true. No one can talk back to Mr. Thompson after just a month and a half on the job. But if I were transferred to sales, I'd have to quit as I am now. Maybe it would have been better to be trained in sales from the start. Mr. Johnson's voice got quieter towards the end, and he added, "I don't feel like I can make it at this company." I stood up and put my hand on Mr. Johnson's shoulder. "I can help you if you're in sales, but as long as you're in administration, Mr. Scholter and I can help you. Plus, we're working on improving communication between administration and other departments. It might take some time, but by the time you get used to the admin work, you'll be able to do your job with confidence." The tears that had welled up in Mr. Johnson's eyes receded. Clutching his now lukewarm cafe au lait, Mr. Johnson smiled and nodded. The sales hub. I cleared my throat next to the double desk of Mr. Anderson, the head of the administration, located at the end of our department's island. Mr. Anderson, with a slow movement, pushed up his glasses and said with lowered soft eyebrows, "I'm sorry, I couldn't say no. I don't quite understand why sales wants me, who spent 10 years in administration. Mr. Thompson seems to have taken a liking to you, Mike." Mr. Anderson sighed deeply. Mr. Scholter said, "It's a shame," just when Mr. Johnson joined us, pursing his brightly painted lips. "I've heard that the sales department at Johnson Construction still clings to old traditions. It seems they value grit and legwork over efficiency. Maybe that's why they're all too busy to even do their expense claims." I thought I was finally seeing a light at the end of the tunnel of overwhelming work days. I never expected to be moved out of administration after all those years. "I'm really sorry," Mr. Anderson said, his face twisted with sorrow, looking even sadder than me. I couldn't find the words to respond. "Mike." Turning towards the weak voice calling me, I saw Mr. Johnson, looking as sad as Mr. Anderson. "It's a bit gloomy now, but I don't think it's all bad." Mr. Miller, speaking in a business-like tone next to Mr. Scholter, drawing everyone's attention. "If Mike moves to sales, it could improve communication between administration and sales. which might be more beneficial than simply adding more staff. Mr. Miller's words brightened the faces of Mr. Anderson, Mr. Scholter, and Mr. Johnson. Mike often prepares the numerical data for sales. He can speak to Mr. Thompson without fear, so if someone from admin is to move, Mike is the best choice. Mr. Miller continued without taking his eyes off his computer screen. His words brought relief not only to Mr. Anderson and Mr. Johnson, but also lightened my shoulders. I shook Mr. Anderson's hand. I'll do my best for the company, not just for admin or sales. From afar, Mr. Scholter's voice teasingly said, You're still so young. If I go to sales, I won't let you guys bother with expense claim reminders. Cheeky, aren't you? It's not going to be that easy. Mr. Johnson, Mr. Anderson, and everyone in the admin laughed. The thought of soon missing this warm atmosphere made the back of my nose tingle. Of course, having been dedicated to administration since I started working, I couldn't expect to be an immediate asset in sales. Today marks 1 month since I transferred to sales. During this month, all I did was revise existing sales materials and compile department performance reports. I knew the clients' names and characteristics. What I didn't know was how to use that knowledge effectively. Writing a 0 next to my name in the sales materials I was creating made me feel heavy. It was a month of fully understanding that numbers are everything for the sales department. Excuse me, coming in. My seat is closest to the entrance of the sales department. Hearing a familiar voice, I saw Mr. Johnson frozen in front of the door. Right. It's that time already. I glanced at my desk calendar and hurriedly stood up. Mr. Johnson had come for the expense claim reminder. Despite my bold declaration that things would change with me in sales, I had forgotten about the expense claim schedule. Sorry, I'll tell everyone right now. Mike. My movement towards Mr. Johnson was halted by Mr. Thompson's voice. You're in sales now, right? Do you have time to help out in administration? I looked back at the computer display I had been working on. There, the sales figures for the month were lined up. Seeing the 0 next to my name, I found myself at a loss for words to reply to Mr. Thompson. Here, this. Mr. Thompson gestured with his large palm towards Mr. Johnson. Not understanding what was being asked of him, Mr. Johnson tilted his head. The list. The one you always give to me, remember? Mr. Thompson said with a laugh. Just waiting for instructions isn't enough to cut it as a working adult. You need to observe and learn from your seniors' actions. Yes, sorry. I wish you'd realize such basic things without being told. It's good we didn't put you in sales. Tears began to pull in Mr. Johnson's eyes. I pulled Mr. Thompson's arm and joked in a light tone. Any more than that, and you'll tarnish your position as the head. Mr. Thompson's face quickly brightened up. Communicating with the younger generation is tough these days. With a hearty laugh, Mr. Thompson returned to his desk. All I could muster to the still frozen Mr. Johnson was, hurry back. After Mr. Johnson disappeared beyond the door, I took a deep breath. I clenched my fists on my knees. Glaring at the numbers lined up on the display, I realized the wall between the administration and sales departments wouldn't disappear like this. Shaking my head, I stood up and hurried towards Mr. Thompson, bathed in sunlight streaming through the window. Boss. The boss raised and lowered his thick eyebrows, looking at me intently. Teach me sales, please. The headquarters of Madison Hotel, a top national hotel group, was located in a verdant area outside the city center. Madison Hotel doesn't just operate budget-friendly accommodations like boutique hotel or motel. Instead, they specialize in luxury hotels, ideal for splurging on special occasions like anniversaries or celebrations. I involuntarily stepped back, overwhelmed by the aura and imposing presence of the headquarters building. It's incredible, isn't it? This magnificent building was constructed by our Williams Construction, Mr. Thompson said, puffing out his chest as he looked up at the Madison Hotel headquarters. The president of this place just fully retired last month. He built up Madison Hotel to this scale in just 1 generation, right? You know your stuff. But in our sales, that kind of background research is the bare minimum we expect, he said. Standing in front of the headquarters of Williams Construction's prime client, Mr. Thompson's laughter was more subdued. He placed his thick hand on my shoulder and whispered in a low voice, "Let's go." His eyes were sharp, gazing intently at the majestic building before us. Madison Hotel operates 8 facilities nationwide, with Williams Construction being responsible for construction and management of 4. The remaining 4 were whimsically assigned to competing companies by the previous president. For Williams Construction, the goal was to secure contracts for future constructions and the management of the existing facilities. An introductory meeting with the new president was essential at this transition. After signing in at the reception, on our way to the meeting room, Mr. Thompson whispered to me, "The new president is his daughter." Of course, I already had this information. Emily, the only daughter of the former president, was the new president of Madison Hotel. "Excuse us." A receptionist opened the heavy double doors for us. "Thank you for coming all this way." A woman waiting on the other side, fitting perfectly in the solemn reception room. "I'm President Emily. My father has informed me about your company. I look forward to working with you today." Emily nodded her head and tucked her long black hair behind her ear. At a closer look, her eyes were spirited, but this was barely noticeable amidst her gentle tone and gestures. "I'm Thompson, from the sales department, Williams Construction. And I'm Mike, also from the sales department." Following the boss, I handed my business card to President Emily. Even her simple act of receiving a card was graceful, making it feel like watching a scene from a historical play. Just a greeting would be rather dull, I thought. After about 5 minutes of seemingly aimless small talk, President Emily, looking intently at Mr. Thompson, said that between the sofa where President Emily sat and the one where Mr. Thompson and I were seated was a glass coffee table. She slowly placed a bundle of documents on it. "I understand Williams Construction chose this table as well." "Yes, the former president wanted to change it, so I took care of it." Mr. Thompson leaned forward intently. In response, Emily leaned back slightly. "I think it's very lovely. It suits the interior and the company's image, and shows great taste," she said without changing her expression. For a moment, a wrinkle formed between Mr. Thompson's brows. "Well, it's not often that younger people compliment my sense of style. I'm pleased. I'll gratefully accept the praise." Mr. Thompson shook her hands. A chill ran down my spine. A bad premonition. "It's nothing, really. When it comes to the company and the building, I hardly know anything. That's why I'd like to ask for both of your wisdom and assistance." "Wisdom, you say?" Mr. Thompson's expression, which had been genially soft until then, turned serious. His sales switch had been flipped on. Emily's slender fingers turned the cover of the document. "Could you please take a look at this material?" What Emily presented was the hotel's sales chart. Net profit was, of course, not listed. Not even the gross profit was included. Below the features of each facility, there were sales charts for individual rooms and floors. "We're analyzing sales from various perspectives," I murmured while following the numbers with my eyes. It was an unconscious observation. The sales listed for each private room were divided by month. In winter and fall, higher floors were popular, while in spring and summer, their usage decreased. The lower floors were unpopular throughout all seasons. It seems none of the facilities have ever been fully booked. That's correct. We hadn't marketed them that way. Why are there so many double rooms on the lower floors? It was then that I noticed the gazes of the 2 people looking at me. "He's impressive," Emily said, her eyes wide as she turned to Mr. Thompson. Mr. Thompson, looking somewhat displeased, wiped his forehead with a handkerchief. He's still new to the sales and doesn't understand much yet. Being new to sales yet able to quickly give opinions after looking at the documents shows a strong ability to understand numbers. That's a significant asset. "So, what do you make of this data?" Mr. Thompson, sitting back down, quickly asked Emily. Her movements and expressions paused for a moment. Then, her mouth slowly curved into a smile. She turned towards me from Mr. Thompson. "It's about the construction of the next facility." Emily's eyes lifted challengingly. Seizing the unexpected opportunity for a business deal, Mr. Thompson clutched his handkerchief tightly. "Is there a plan for the next facility already in progress?" "Yes, but we've had difficulties choosing a location." "The location?" At my question, Emily nodded slightly. "Madison Hotel started with our first hotel in New York. We have facilities in the Northeast, Midwest, and the South, but we haven't expanded to the West. There are many established facilities there, So our plans have been repeatedly halted. But now that I'm the president, I want to make it a success. The West, California. While she hadn't specified the exact location, it was easy to infer from the documents Emily had provided. We have a facility in the South, but most of our buildings are concentrated in the Midwest and Northeast regions, places like Illinois, Pennsylvania, Ohio, as well as Michigan and Indiana. Many are in areas with heavy snowfall. As I looked up from the documents, Emily shrugged and smiled. My father loved snowy landscapes. He's retired now and is excited to go to the Colorado to watch the High Plains Snow Goose Festival every year. As she put away the documents, Emily's expression darkened a bit. But the best locations are already taken. Some of our competitors don't consider the instability, but Madison Hotel can afford to overlook that. The former president would probably say the same. But momentum is also important, isn't it? Announcing the construction of a new hotel just after taking over the company, especially in a region we've never entered before, would create a lot of buzz. Speed is key in these situations. Mr. Thompson spoke fervently. Now, it was Emily's turn to furrow her brow. Other collaborating companies have said the same. They pushed for locations that weren't thoroughly researched. For the first time today, Emily's expression seemed to truly change. Until now, she had worn a fixed, predetermined face of a business leader. But now, there was genuine emotion in her lowered brows. I cleared my dry throat and then spoke up. What about reconstruction? Mr. Thompson and Emily slowly turned their gazes towards me. What about rebuilding for publicity? While the reconstruction is underway, we can search for new land and proceed with planning. This way, we can continuously provide news that delights our customers. I was under the impression that none of our facilities require rebuilding due to aging. Emily's previously extended posture now leaned forward, anticipating the continuation of my thoughts. Reconstruction isn't only for aging reasons. I pulled the document Emily had pushed aside towards me. The number of guests at each facility isn't dropping, but their revenue is gradually decreasing. Could it be that the demographics of our guests are changing, but the cheapest rooms on the lower floors aren't popular? That's because they're not suitable for families. The data here only goes back 10 years, but back then, it was mainly frequented by older guests, while recently, there's been an increase in family visits, right? However, the larger rooms are only on the higher floors, making it difficult for families with small children to stay. The noise from footsteps can be disturbing on lower floors. That's why, I believe, guests are concentrating in the middle floors. I found myself speaking passionately. As I continued expressing my opinions, my voice trailed off, becoming quieter. Glancing at Emily, I saw her eyes widen more than before, fixed on me. So, what do you think? Startled by the sudden low question, I jumped. Mr. Thompson was looking at me intently. Well, if we could have double rooms, 4-person rooms, and larger rooms on each floor, lower, middle, and upper, it would expand the options for guests. I replied, scratching my cheek. Emily, looking stunned, muttered, "Who are you?" As we left the reception room, Emily asked Mr. Thompson, in future negotiations, could we have Mike led? I'd like to hear more of his opinions. The business relationship with Madison Hotel began 25 years ago. Mr. Thompson, who was just a new recruit at the time, repeatedly visited the former president and secured the contract. Since then, he had been the sole sales representative for Madison Hotel. In the taxi on the way back, feeling somewhat uneasy, Mr. Thompson laughed. She's nothing like her predecessor. She lacks judgment. Despite being far from Madison Hotel's headquarters, his laughter lacked its usual strength. Mike, aren't you with the boss today? Back at the office, the sales team members asked me one after another. I repeated the same excuse I had used several times today. I have to finish some documents. Sales is about bringing in numbers. It's great you're making documents, but that won't generate sales. Don't blame us if you get transferred to a regional office. As they walked past me, someone joked, planning a comeback to administration. I might as well transfer, I muttered, shaking my head slightly. Then I glanced at the white board near the entrance. Mr. Thompson had left right after the morning assembly. The return time was written as 5 p.m. It had been a week since the negotiation with Madison Hotel, and Mr. Thompson hadn't invited me to any meetings since then. Or maybe I was emitting an aura that made it hard for him to approach me. In the taxi ride back, Mr. Thompson's face was unusually strained as he made small talk. It was difficult to sit beside him with such an expression. "Mike, there's a call for you on line 1. Yes." A senior colleague waved to get my attention. I picked up the receiver and was about to press 1 when I heard, "It's the new president of Madison Hotel. Hello, this is Mike from sales. Thank you for the other day. I'm sorry for calling unexpectedly." "No, that's fine. Mr. Thompson isn't here at the moment. Is it all right if you speak with me? I wanted to talk with you, Mike." I could have emailed, but I didn't want to strain your relationship with Mr. Thompson. I was momentarily lost for words, then heard a gentle laugh from the other end. "Your opinions were very insightful. However, changing rooms on every floor would require extensive renovations and closing the hotel, which is not feasible as we have reservations far in advance. We've concluded it's not practical." Emily's polite "I'm sorry" was easy to picture. Her upturned eyes forcibly lowered, forming a serious expression, a clear face of apology. "No, it's okay. It was just a spur-of-the-moment idea from me. I'm actually sorry that you had to call because of it. The reason I called is something else." Her voice, gentle until then, suddenly became firm and assertive. "I'm curious about how you developed your ability to read numbers. Where did you learn that?" "Me, you mean? You instantly grasped the trends from another company's data. Even if it's a different industry, you could imagine the customer flow and identify problems from a quick glance. It might be unrefined, but I wouldn't have thought you were new to sales. Does Williams Construction have a management department?" Emily's speech quickened. Her rapid, unfamiliar praise made my lips involuntarily curve into a smile. "I used to work in the administration department, handling various office tasks." "In administration? Like accounting?" "I did handle some accounting, but at Williams Construction, accounting, HR, and general affairs are all managed by one department. So I wasn't exclusively in accounting. I think my eye for detail developed from creating sales documents there." Emily responded with a soft icy, then paused for a few seconds before saying, "This is a proposal." I could almost sense her straightening her posture on the other end of the phone. "Would you be my friend?" Caught off guard by her unexpected proposal, I was searching for words when Emily continued, "I feel it would be a waste to limit our interaction to B2B conversations. Of course, we can share any corporate secrets, but why not share how we each acquire knowledge and skills in our daily work? We are about the same age, and I think we could have meaningful conversations. Couldn't we discuss this in a business setting?" I was unsure of Emily's motives and intentions. My voice naturally became softer. Emily cleared her throat and said in a subdued voice, "I apologize for rushing into this. This is not the opinion of mine as a hotel manager, but as an individual who wants to support your growth and talent." Growth and talent. I don't know if you could have developed such skills if you had been in sales from the beginning. Our salespeople have contributed to the company for a long time, but few can read numbers as well as you. The ability to view company figures from a bird's-eye view is essential for a salesman, yet it's a skill in short supply. It's hard to find people who can effectively apply that skill. Emily's voice softened. "I understand that your sudden transfer must have been very unsettling, but I really want you to succeed." This time, I cleared my throat. My previously hunched back straightened naturally. I was amazed at how much encouragement from someone could empower me. I looked up to prevent the tears welling up in my eyes from spilling. "May I make a suggestion as well?" I had transferred to the sales department at the start of summer. The wind had become colder, and the air drier. I could feel winter approaching. Mr. Thompson, holding his black coat in one hand, entered the floor announcing, "I'm back." He then placed an envelope on my desk. "We got the contract." Mr. Thompson, his nose reddened, had left an envelope marked Madison Hotel on my desk. I took out the contract and reviewed it. In summary, Madison Hotel was entrusting Williams Construction with future construction, renovation, and management of their already operating facilities. Congratulations. I put the contract back in the envelope and stood up. As I gave Mr. Thompson a handshake, a raspy voice came from above. "This is your number, but I only accompanied you for the initial greeting." I heard from Emily. "So, you asked her to keep me as the main contact, huh?" Mr. Thompson's large eyes fixed sternly on me. Madison Hotel is our biggest client. What were you thinking? Do you think it's easy for us to give opinions? And she even suggested you take over. Were you trying to save my face? I felt the gazes of the entire sales department on Mr. Thompson and me. I overheard someone say, "He's breaking the boss's pride. Emily preferred you, Mike. These are your numbers, and from the next negotiation, I'll step back." Mr. Thompson sighed softly, forcing a smile like the one I had seen in the taxi that day. I took a deep breath and shouted with all the strength I could muster, "Please teach me sales. There's so much I want to learn from you. That's why I can't have you step back from this role. But as I am now, inexperienced in sales, I'd only be a hindrance. That's why I asked to be temporarily removed from the Madison Hotel negotiations." The murmurs that had been swirling around the room ceased. A silence filled the usually bustling sales floor. I was dedicated to the administration department. I always resented other departments for not sticking to deadlines and rules. I accepted the transfer to sales to improve communication between departments. But after attending negotiations with you and hearing Emily's thoughts, I realized it's not just admin that faces challenges. I didn't understand the pressure and tasks of the sales department. I was the one living in a narrow world. My head, bowed down, was caught between Mr. Thompson's hands. He lifted my face. "When you voice your opinion, look the person in the eye." I wiped my teary eyes with my suit sleeve and firmly met Mr. Thompson's gaze as I took a breath. "I want everyone to understand the roles of the administration department, but I also want to learn about sales. It may sound like a fantasy, but I want us all to improve the company together." After finishing, I was gasping for breath. Then, in the silence, applause broke out. "I misunderstood you, and I apologize for that." Mr. Thompson's thick palms patted my head a few times. His usual, hearty and generous smile returned to his face. "Mike, give me the documents." I checked inside my bag. I handed him a map of California from my bag. I wondered how many times I had accompanied Mr. Thompson on his negotiations. I had lost count, having witnessed his skills as a salesman so often. I wrote Madison Hotel Headquarters in the destination column on the white bod. After putting down the marker, Mr. Thompson said, "Right," placing a hand near his mouth. "Today is the deadline for expense claims. Make sure everyone submits theirs. I'll check them when I return." His voice resonated across the floor. The reactions of the sales team members varied, but it seemed Mr. Thompson's reminder had changed the overall awareness in the department. Mr. Johnson no longer needed to visit sales for reminders. Standing next to Mr. Thompson in the elevator hall, we looked up at the display board. "It's finally happening," I murmured. Glancing at me, Mr. Thompson responded in a deep voice, "Yes, it is. I'm sorry for saying that admin work could be done by anyone. I appreciate your efforts to understand sales." Taken aback by his unexpected words, I stood wide-eyed as the elevator doors opened. "All right, let's go." Mr. Thompson entered the elevator first. His back was strong and broad. I nodded deeply and followed him into the elevator,